Much for coming on this beautiful day. It is my absolute joy to introduce Phil. He's somebody that I've known probably since high school, maybe.
I think so.
I remember you cutting mats in my studio upstairs in the attic. Remember that? Way back in the olden days. So I knew him when. Yeah, there you go. Well, I wanted to just introduce and tell a little bit about Phil's story. So Philip Frey was born in 1967.
Baby.
Just look what he's accomplished. And he's best known for his bold paintings of Maine's coastline, landscape, and working waterfronts. His primary focus is color and light, and the inherent forms found in nature, interiors, and figures. He paints from direct perception, preferring the dynamic quality and richness and challenges of working from life, and that is a challenge indeed. In 2016, the University of Maine Sullivan Art Museum mounted a solo exhibition of Phil's work. His work has been highlighted in numerous publications and several books, including Philip Frey, Here and Now, Marshall Wilkes, 2018, by Daniel Canny and Carl Little, and Art of Acadia and Paintings of Portland, both by Carl Little and David Little. Phil studied at Columbus College of Art and Design and earned his BFA in painting from Syracuse University in 1990. He was awarded the Helliker Lahoten Foundation, did I say that right? Oh, thank you. Well, that was a hard one. Residency in 2012. Phil's work can be found in numerous private and corporate collections, including the Zillman Art Museum, the Jackson Laboratory, Harlan Coburn, Dick Wolf Films, and Representative Shelley Pingree. Phil lives in Sullivan, Maine, where he maintains a year-round studio. So let's welcome a warm new
Thank you very much. This is great. What a nice, beautiful turnout. And thank you for coming here on this gorgeous, gorgeous evening. We've been having a great string of evenings and days lately. So thank you to Farmstead Artists for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to see all the amazing, beautiful art around you. It's quite nice. I haven't been in here in quite a long time, so thank you for inviting me. So, what I wanted to do is first let you know I'm at the end of this. We're going to pull out a few names, 3 names, and give away 3 signed copies of my book. So if you haven't signed your name over there and put it in the jar, you can do that at some point. And so first, I'd like to start with a little story of this last year during a solo show at the Courthouse Gallery. And one of the last things that is on my mind when I am working on my pieces is signing the piece or titling it. That's the very last thing that's on my mind. There are many artists in here, I'm sure. How many artists are in here? I'm sure that's probably the last thing on your minds as well. What title, and so forth, and signing it. So during the solo show, Isabella and I showed up probably almost like an hour early, half hour early, something like that. And we're with our friends, Elsie and Richard, and their 2 kids. And we've known them for quite a while. And so Sylvia comes by and is tugging on my arm or my pant leg or something. She says, "Phil, I think you forgot to sign on your paintings." And so I said, okay, I was a little dubious. And so we walked over to it, and indeed I had not signed that painting. And I said, well, I confessed that, this is what happens sometimes, I forget. And so they decided that they were going to go around the entire show and see if I hadn't signed other paintings. And they came back one by one, and 2 other paintings had not signed. They were on to me. So essentially what I had to do is we had to find some Sharpies in the gallery. So we found some appropriate colored Sharpies, and I very delicately signed the paintings. So if you ever happen to find those paintings out in the art world with Sharpie signatures on them, those are very special. So, so what I would like to do is start with after that story, a quote from Robert Henri, and I'll kind of get out of the way so some people can see. What's that? Oh, yeah.
There you go.
We may have to do this throughout. It's kind of being like on a boat in here, so just kind of go with it. So, Robert Henri, if you don't know of him and his work, is in 1865 to 1929, and he was a very influential artist and teacher in the art world, and also a distant cousin of Mary Cassatt. So the quote goes like this, if you can't quite see it way back there. There are moments in our lives, there are moments in a day, when we seem to see beyond the usual. Such are the moments of our, of our greatest happiness. Such are the moments of our greatest wisdom. If one could but recall his vision by some sort of song, it was in this hope that the arts were invented. Signposts on the way to what may be, signposts towards greater knowledge. So I recently came across this in his book called I think it's The Art Spirit. Someone correct me on that if I've got it wrong. And it's a series of his quotes and words to his students throughout the years. So I thought it was helpful to me, and what it made me think of is I think to be open to these moments, which are always available, it requires the joyful joyful habit of not doing much.
Right on.
Yeah. Yes. In other words, just paying attention to our senses and relaxing without adding or taking away from the experience of the moment. From that enjoyment comes one of the crown jewels in human experience, contentment. The arts and the natural world help us in this noble endeavor in our present times of speediness and distraction. Our minds can be disturbed by the news or inner troubles, so the appreciation of art and music in the natural world and the contentment that it brings are the curative balm that calms and clears the inner waters of our mind. So I may have to do this. There we go. So, as you can see, I think the artist's role is to notice and to see what is before us. To paint what we see, not what we think we see, as Betty Edwards said, and the author of Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. That takes some courage and curiosity and a leap of faith, because there is some space there, possibility of creating something from nothing, or something from a blank canvas. And to look at something as though we had never seen it before takes great courage, as Henri Matisse said. So I'm going to walk you through some of my work and through some bodies of work, and we'll start with some landscapes and tell you a little bit about my inspiration and what I'm interested in. Mary said some of those things already. And so ever since my family moved back to Maine in 1980 from New Bedford, Massachusetts, I've basically been in love with the Maine landscape. The mountains, the forests, the waterways, the ocean, the rivers, and working waterfronts. So spending lots of time hiking, sketching, painting in the various landscapes around me. And so Here wasn't very far. It was behind my house in Sullivan in the winter. Here is, sometimes I will create paintings that are not necessarily of a particular place, but I've painted the Maine Island so many times that it just becomes natural. So this particular piece was inspired by being out on Schoodic and around Schoodic, which is one of my absolute favorite places to paint. I'm probably right in your way. And so here's another painting of Schoodic out on Grindstone Neck. And as we're going along, if you do have any questions, just please speak up. So my artistic process is usually being outside in nature with my senses open and basically ready to see. It can be the way the shadow of a building is cast upon the ground, the way the sun illuminates a red maple from behind, or the colorful patterns created by the lobsterman's gear and boat. And I'm also inspired by interior spaces and the figure, which I'll show you later on, some of those, and trying to pay attention to the ephemeral qualities of light, color, and pattern that often go unnoticed when we're going about our day. So I begin by sketching and photographing. Any of you that have been out on the Blueberry Barrens in the fall, this is what you see. And I particularly love when you see the barrens that have been burnt and then the barrens that have not been burnt side by side. And in the springtime, when that happens, you have the burnt field, and then you have the spring green that pops up next to it. This is down in Portland, the waterfront down in Portland. So in the studio, my chosen medium is oil paint on hand stretched, then in canvas. And then I basically use whatever source material that I've come up with. That's sketching in pencil or watercolor or smaller oil paintings. And then once I'm back in the studio, I'll use those source materials as well as photographs to develop a larger piece. So something like this, I had done a piece and some sketches on site, and then in the studio, this piece I think was about 36 by 48. So that's the general size of the paintings like you see around me. Like these here, this is a 30 by 40, so that was a 36 by 48. Generally these days, I paint nothing bigger than will fit in my car. Because that creates more problems down the road. They don't, yeah. No amount of plastic, and just seeing those people going down the road with their mattresses on the top. So in terms of the tools that I use, it's essentially brushes, palette knives, and these days I've been using this tool called, it's a squeegee, not like the squeegee you might squeegee your bathroom or windows with, but it's this little tool, comes in various lengths, and it can scrape and push and pull paint in interesting ways. So this piece, as you might recognize, is up in Lubec. And another piece of Portland in the waterfront. One of the things that I'm really interested in, particularly with the waterfront, I like to go towards the not pristine parts of the waterfront. I like hanging out where the fishermen are hanging out. All that stuff, all that color. And there's places down in Portland, and I think it's kind of disappearing down there with various buildings, is the sort of the patchwork, the walking along some of the docks there that have been patched one board at a time, walls have been patched one board at a time, and the colors and the patterns. So it's, what I like to do is I'll go down and sketch, take photographs, and just spend time just looking and seeing what patterns I can see, what colors that are striking to me. This is a section I could not believe my eyes when I went. I forget, it's not, is this Widgery Wharf? I can't remember. Each one of them has a name and I can't remember which. But it's a few wharfs down towards South Portland, away from DeMillo's. And the color of these lobster shacks, every single lobsterman artists decided, you know, these creative lobstermen, they decided to identify each of their lobster shacks with different colors.
Lots of leftover buoy paint.
Yes. Yes. And as you can see, someone mentioned earlier that my palette has changed and my style has changed over the years, and that, I think that's normal for most artists. You could look at Henri Matisse or Picasso or George O'Keeffe, anyone. When you look at the traditional training from their mature phase to and beyond, you can see that things change. I love this photo of George O'Keeffe. He's got this sly look. Yeah. So this is another great quote, and this is from her. Objective painting is not good painting unless it is good in the abstract sense. A hill or a tree cannot make a good painting just because it is a hill or a tree. It is lines and colors put together so that they may say something. So I want to take you a little bit through sort of the figurative phase of work, and Mary did a great pronunciation of the Helliker Lahoughton Foundation residency. This was when I was out there on Great Cranberry Island back in 2012, I think. And as many of you know, island life or small village life in the summer and otherwise reminds me of when I was growing up as a free-range kid. And this was definitely a free-range experience on this dock with these kids. And there was maybe one adult, which was the third figure from the left, and she was there and maybe not there, depending. But the kids were jumping off the dock in between the ferry coming in and out. And most mothers probably would have been like, would not want that to happen. So, but it was just fabulous to see everyone, kids just being kids. So one of the things I enjoyed about doing this painting, I was just hanging out, taking photographs, and waiting for the right sort of scene to come along. I took many, many photographs and then came back to the studio and looked over them. This one I had to do nothing to. The composition was set perfectly. And one of the things that I loved is the figure on the bottom right. Does that remind you of any other famous painting?
It does.
Yes. Yeah, Andrew Wyatt's Christina's World. And I did not place that figure like that at all. It was just sort of how it came out. So, some portrait work, some models that I've worked with over the years. And in this little series, what I wanted to do was change my palette a little bit, pull it back from the bright colors that I had been working with, and essentially kind of worked more towards the, I guess, the old master style in terms of a much more muted palette. They had fewer colors to work with than we did. One of the things I enjoyed about being in art school was having the, being able to draw the figure at any time that one wanted. And it's a great way of learning how to draw and how to paint. And I had one professor, Ernie Viveros, and he was a drawing and painting instructor, and he said, if you can draw, other than the hands and the feet, if you can draw and paint the back, you can paint just about anything, because it's so subtle. And he gave me this nickname, Subtle Nuances, for a while when I was in school, because I really enjoyed all the sort of the subtle nuances of sort of painting, drawing the figure. And part of what I'm doing in this painting and some of the others is I am always trying to expose myself to other artists that I've studied in school, and then a trip that I'll tell you about a little bit later to Italy, as essentially the different, like in here, maybe the Cubists or the Fauvists like Matisse and Picasso, and Cézanne in particular for this piece, looking at the planes, how can you break down the facets of the figure or the landscape? So when you think about, say, when you look at, say, a jewel, say a diamond or whatever type, the facets on there, they're sort of showing the different angles of that object. And particularly in some of Cézanne's paintings, you can see that very, very clearly. Some of these paintings were up in the show we had at the University at Sullivan Art Museum in 2016. So in terms of that, that show, what I ended up doing is showing a group of paintings that were the figure, some abstracts, which I'll show you in a few moments, and some of the landscape work. And essentially what I've done throughout the years, I've worked with different bodies of work, and sometimes abstractions which help me to experiment with color and texture and composition, free from the object that I might be looking at. In this particular piece, this ended up going into that show, and George Kinghorn, the curator and director of the Sullivan Art Museum, was in my studio looking at work before it was going to go up to the show, and he asked me about this piece. It's kind of hard to tell, but the face is not finished, so to speak. All the details aren't there. And he said, "Are you going to finish the face?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "No."
Is that piece quite small?
It is. It's about 12 by 12 inches.
Okay.
Yeah. So the lesson I took from that, and also I've taken from many other teachers, is to, and I try to do this when I'm teaching workshops and working with students, is to help them stop.
Yeah.
Help them step away from put the brush down, step away from the easel. So that's kind of what I try to do with myself, and a lot of times that is backing up from the easel, taking breaks, so I can actually see how the piece is progressing. So so I don't overwork it, so it remains fresh and vibrant.
That's a cool cat.
Yeah, it's to be or not to be. That's the name of this one.
It looks like to be or not to be, what's the difference?
Yeah. So this is a friend of mine, that last one in these, you hear a friend of mine, Lila, who she and I got together to, she was reciting some Shakespeare, some of her own work, and it was just a lot of fun. And I have way more photos than I know what to do with, but just wanting to get the gesture and the movement and the feeling that she was creating through some of that. And one of the things I'm very interested in, especially in terms of the figure and in terms of the landscape, is this idea of gesture. And in school, we had these things called gesture drawings, where you had a minute, 2 minutes, maybe 5, to do a quick sketch, a gesture drawing of the figure. So you had to, it's kind of like right now, if you were to squint your eyes, you're just gonna see the shadows and the shapes, all the details, and if your eyesight's bad, just take your glasses off. Then you just see the gesture. Like there's a person right now that's standing in the back with light coming from behind her. I can't see any of the details of her face, just a little bit of the hand, but it's a silhouette. So it's this that I'm interested in terms of, it's not the details, it's more of the gesture. So here, whoops, here is a little, skip one, there we go. So a little, and I like how that light is coming into here now, it's adding to the piece. So one of the things I was doing with this little series of abstracts is limiting my palette to a few colors, and just, what I ended up doing is I had been working on some other paintings, and whatever palette was left over, I started using what was there, and I started creating some abstract shapes and responding to those. The interesting thing is that even when you're doing abstract pieces, your habits of making marks come back. They're still there. And even some of the symbology or the shapes that you make. Like the next one, for years I've done paintings of looking through doorways, so to speak, and even my landscapes have that. If you look at this piece on the right, it has sort of a doorway sort of set up. You know, you have this, and you're looking through this space. And of course, this one has that, you know, doorways and windows and such. So in this piece, it's a little bit hard to see, but it's creating that same setup. Yeah. And I don't know, is it possible to get that little bit of light
I was gonna
off
say.
the screen on the right hand side? I'm not sure where it's coming from.
It's a little
but,
distracting.
so this one is called The Usual Suspects. There's a movie called The Usual Suspects, which is nothing like this painting at all. But I was doing some work for a friend of mine taking some photographs for her in this house, and I was wandering around this big house in Grindstone Neck, and I came across this room, and the children's room, and they had lined up these stuffed animals just perfectly, and the expressions on their faces and all of that was just such a wonderful setup for a painting. So now there's still life pieces, so that this section is sort of the still lifes that I've done over the years. The previous piece and these next two pieces is where I was basically trying to further limit my palette in the sense of, if you can't find it, that's all right. Oh, it is. Oh, okay. No worries. Thank you. So what I was trying to do with this is limit the palette to some grays and two other colors. And why I wanted to do that was to basically expand my knowledge and experience of a few colors. And when you do that, you start to learn more about those colors versus having the entire palette at your disposal. Some orange slices on a gray box, in a gray still life box. Actually, I think that light is kind of working out well for some reason. So some of you might recognize this. It's the children's room in the Hancock Point Library. And a series of interiors. There was a house that some students and I rented probably at least 12 years ago, and I have painted multiple paintings from that space. It was the quintessential summer Maine cottage, uninsulated, and uneven floors and furniture that had been used for decades. The couch had this sort of sag to it. And I've done many paintings sort of in homage to Henri Matisse, and this is when I saw this set up in this house, I thought of him immediately in terms of the flower wallpaper patterns. So obviously you can see the door set up going through multiple doorways. And one of the things that I'm doing when I'm looking at landscapes is I oftentimes try to find a place where I can create some depth. So there's something in the foreground, the midground, and the background that can brings me through. So it leads the eye from one set to the next. And that's why I think for me doing the interior spaces have been so helpful. It's sort of helped me think about that. So one of the things I was thinking about in terms of doing these multiple genres of work is that there are many artists do that. And I think of sort of Alan McGee, who some of you might know, a Maine painter, and he's known for those rock paintings that you have seen. But he's also known for his fantastical figure drawings, or much less known for those, and also his socio-political short films that I don't think too many people know of. But the most interesting thing, I think, is when I discovered years ago, so everyone might know Mondrian's work, abstract expressionist, and hard-edged, very limited palettes, black, white, white, red, and blue, and very geometric. He also did a beautiful series of floral paintings that look nothing like those other paintings. They're just these very sensitive paintings of still lifes. This is an example of a painting that I reworked, and I've been doing that more often, paintings that have been kicking around for a few years. and they come back to the studio after being in the gallery for a while, and if they haven't sold, I look at them and I see, is that painting still working? And in this particular case, it had a big chaise lounge in the front with some candles and so forth, and I completely eliminated those, and I made up some light and shadows on the bottom half of it. And to me, it works much, much better. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, so that's just, you're seeing, this one's over here. So here's, I've done many, many paintings of Hancock Point, including the pier and the boathouse and the boats in the summer.
Like that one before it got wiped out.
And in terms of some of these paint, over the last few years, I've been trying again to shift my palette from not necessarily an overall very bright palette, but working with some more muted tones, some grays, and then making these pops of color like the orange you see on the vests. And this is on Somme Sound. I think I was, Isabella and I, my partner, were hiking, and the clouds were just doing this beautiful thing of just coming over. They would seem to be coming from the north and just going back in this beautiful procession. This is out on Great Cranberry Island, and sort of an abstracted landscape. And this is that same spot, just from a different vantage point, painted a few years later.
Is the sky, does the sky actually have stripes on it, or is that an effect of the,
That's the effect of the screen.
okay.
Yeah, every one of these paintings has a stripe. Again, this is down in Portland and on the waterfront down there. And I couldn't quite, for the life of me, figure out what this thing was. That little, it was like this little tiny float attached to the larger float. And I was wondering, what in the world would someone, but it basically served as a little island for that seagull.
That's probably where somebody kept their lunch.
That could be, and the seagull came by. So one of the things I've been thinking about a lot over the last few years is composition. And I've looked back at, some of you might know sort of the golden section. And I've read Charles Boulot's book called The Painter's Secret Geometry. And it really kind of helped me understand composition more, in terms of that it's not always just instinct that you're trying to create a composition, but actually using a little bit of math to figure it out. So hopefully my compositions have gotten a little bit better. This is out at Schoodic. Every year I teach a painting workshop at Schoodic Institute, and so I get up early in the morning and go down to see the sunrise over, I think it's Little Moose Island, I believe, and it's so stunning out there. But here, the painting a sunrise or a sunset, I think is, in terms of landscape, it's one of the most difficult things I think to do, because it's sunsets and sunrises. Sometimes they're so otherworldly. They don't last that long, and they're just drop dead gorgeous. And the colors that happen change so quickly. And one of the things that's a little tricky to do is that the brightest color is the thing that's furthest away from you. And so you're having to deal with that in terms of how to work with that. This is my backyard, it's on Cosmos. Portland again. It's lots of fruitful paintings from down there. And I want to get to, before we run out of time, a trip Isabella and I made to Italy. That really opened my eyes to seeing a lot of the work that I had only seen in books or on slides. So this is in Tuscany, in a town called San Gimignano, and same place. I had to learn to paint some different greens. Olive trees, we don't have those here. And this is Isabella in one of the Airbnbs or apartments that we rented. And this is the view from that same place in this painting right behind me. This is Rome. And here, one of the things I loved about doing these landscapes and cityscapes was the palette. You know, you go to a different place and there's a different palette. They're using different colors to paint their buildings. And the streets are different colors. And then someplace completely different. This is in LA. My friend Lila commissioned me to do this painting, and it ended up being quite large, 30 by 56. So it was a big piece. And this was such a blast to paint. She wanted LA. So LA's in a state of constant construction, and she wanted all of that there, and the street walks, the signs, all of that. And then last few pieces, this is Hancock Point again.
You documented the bridge.
What's that?
You documented the causeway going out.
Oh, yeah.
They had to change it.
Yeah.
Washed away with the stone.
Yeah, this was painted pre-storm. So this piece here, some of you might recognize, Raven's Nest. So this is kind of what Karen Wilkes, the owner of the Courthouse Gallery, said about this piece, if I can find it in my notes. So she says, and this has to do with a little bit of, you know, what I talked about earlier, kind of slowing down and noticing. And she says, I love the way Frey guides your eye down a rocky fissure, past gnarled roots and sunlit cliffs, towards a glimpse of swirling blue waters. The way his energetic brushwork unapologetically asks you to pause and take in the rugged beauty of this sacred spot. And that place is rugged. You don't want to. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I don't go there.
Not for the faint of heart or weak of limb. And that is Isabella out on Grindstone Neck. And then the place I hadn't painted at for quite a while was Monhegan. We went out there last summer. And then my backyard, where I think everyone here probably does a spring burn. Or maybe a winter burn or something. So, And this is Raven's Nest from a different view. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess, any questions so far you'd like to ask? I'm just about on the last slide.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you sketch it all out, like the shapes, or do you just start painting?
Oh, I definitely sketch out the composition. Yes. Yep. What like I was alluding to earlier, compositions for me are really key, and to sketch out the composition, you know, in graphite and so forth is, in a sketchbook, I think is really key. So you're laying out all the elements, and you can actually lay out the value structure, the black, the white, the gray. And what that does for me, and I know it does for other artists, is that you're not handicapping yourself when you get to you figured that stuff out before you actually get to the painting. So you're gonna figure out whether or not how those shapes relate to the edge of the canvas. And if you do the sketch in the same proportion as your final painting versus say a square going to a rectangle or vice versa, then what you do is you really set yourself up for a more successful piece, because you've worked through your ideas, and it takes a lot less time than to paint.
Do you also take photographs?
I do, yeah. If you look at my phone, you can see too many photographs. But the thing about the photographs, I think that's interesting, is that it may catch a moment in time, but one of the things that happens, I notice with myself and I notice with students, is that we become legally bound to paint whatever is in there.
Yeah.
So the idea of being able to jettison the photo, and that even with the photos, I will do sketches as well. And so being able to actually put the photograph away at some point and just work on the piece. And sometimes I will just look at the sketch and forget about the photograph, unless I need some color, figure out some color notes or what have
That's
you.
what I was wondering about the colors.
Yes. Yep. This one?
Yeah.
Yes. What? Anything in particular?
I just love the colors.
Oh, thank you.
The blues.
Yeah. Well, this is Bean Island off of Hancock. And I've been out there a few times, and here, you know, for me, this one is, again, trying to create it was painted in the summertime, and working with those rich blues and greens and so forth. And of course, the clouds, the dynamic clouds were interesting to me. Yes, James?
Have you gotten rid of your acrylics forever?
I haven't painted acrylics in quite a while. I do watercolors, but the main reason for switching to the oils has been the plein air painting. Acrylic painting outside is really kind of tricky. I mean, as you might know, it dries in a heartbeat. You know, if you're in the sun or the wind, it's not fun, in my estimation. Yes?
I'm playing here, 2 questions.
Yeah.
Do you underpaint do you use a color on your canvas?
Oh yeah, toning the canvas a particular color. Yes, I do.
Do you do the same color every time?
No, not all the time. It really kind of depends on the piece. If the piece is
I was thinking plain air, if you're just going out.
yes, even if I'm doing plein air, I will prime or tone the canvas. Sometimes actually you can kind of see it. If you look at that, not all of you can probably see that. There's actually this color here in the island, or this kind of orangey, reddish orangey color.
Okay.
That I'll use like an earth tone and put a thin wash and then wipe it off. So essentially, instead of having a white canvas that I'm working with, is you have a color underneath that's complementary to whatever it is that you're gonna paint. Like the painter Richard Schmidt, he talks about making different colored toned canvases depending upon, like say you were out and you're gonna go out here into the woods and it's mostly green. You could do a light green, like a terra vert, which is kind of an earthy green color, and that could be your tone. So you had this green already there, so you're not kind of fighting against the white of it. But watercolorists wouldn't necessarily do that, like Mary Laurie could attest to, and others, where you're working with the white of the paper. This is a little bit different. Yeah. Other thoughts or questions? So, let's see. So this piece here is one of the most recent pieces I've done. And I went out to Great Sprucehead Island for Art Week. Through some of you might know of this Great Sprucehead Island. So Fairfield Porter, his father, and his family bought Great Sprucehead Island back in 1925, I think. Yeah, 1912. Okay, yes, we have an expert here. And so I was out there for Art Week with 11 other artists for a week, and they fed us and housed us, and we could roam the island and paint. And it was just a fabulous experience. The house was just big house, as they call it, has 12, 14 rooms, something like that. And red walls, yellow walls, red floors, dragons on like the main room. It has a ceiling almost as this high, and then 2 dragons that are painted on the walls. And it's just a fabulous spot to go visit. And so I met a bunch of artists, including one artist, Jenny Brillhart, who's an artist in Blue Hill, and she was up in one of the screened porches looking down, and that's what this painting is. And so we hung out together in that space. She was doing a painting, and I was doing this. And what struck me is, this one is the different viewpoint. And I hadn't done many paintings of this kind of viewpoint. And I can remember, I think it was you, Ken, that were talking about Native American artists, imagining looking from doing something from looking up in that corner, looking down. So to me, it was this different viewpoint, this different angle, and then of course the shadow. It's like, oh, that's a cool shadow. And then of course the wheelbarrow, which came and went as we were painting.
Always making difference.
Right. At some point, I was out there, and Jenny was directing me how to put it back in the right spot. And then, of course, there's what you can barely see is there's a covered grill in the dark of the shadow, which I quite like. So, one of the things of being around in an experience like that, you're around these other artists, you're seeing what they're doing, but you're out in this space. It's like going out to Montegan Island, but I think even better in the sense that you had Fairfield Porter painting out there, you had Elliot Porter taking photographs, and then you have Stephen Porter sculpture, and then Nina Porter doing paintings, the granddaughter of Fairfield Porter. So you have this lineage of artists that have painted out there and done these works, and you're looking at his work, which I really enjoy, and he has this very soft palette, very earthy, very influenced by, the fog coming and going, and so forth. So, well, I think that is it. So, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and maybe we'll do that little drawing for those three books. So I wonder if someone might grab that jar of